Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily from Slack. We're now live with the session that I'm going to present on building your digital HQ and how Slack can empower remote working. Thank you so much for joining this session. I'm going to walk you through many of the things that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about at the moment and are really top of mind in this remote work field that we find ourselves in. So thank you for joining my session. As I mentioned, my name's Emily. Senior Solutions Engineer here at Slack. So my role is to work with the sales team, both pre and post sales, as really the Slack product expert. So being able to discuss businesses' challenges, use cases, and really mapping the Slack solution to be able to help you solve those problems. You'll be probably unsurprised to hear that a lot of the things that we've been talking about recently and focusing on what Slack is and how Slack can really support companies through this remote working time. So that's going to be the focus for today. Within this topic, I'm going to focus on 3 key areas and sessions. So recruiting, how you can hire faster, onboarding more effectively with Slack, and finally, and almost most importantly, how you can continue to drive employee engagement through the culture of your company by using Slack. And then a sort of sneak peek into how we're going to continue thinking about this over the next few months. So to start, you may be very familiar with Slack. You might have no familiarity at all. So what actually is Slack? To explain what Slack is, I want to start by just setting the scene. As I'm sure everyone is well aware, remote working has created challenges for everybody. As the physical offices no longer facilitate real-time conversations and connections, organizations are facing this huge pressure to evolve. This includes companies facing increased pressure to adapt and execute quickly, leaders needing to find new ways to keep organizations and teams aligned and coordinated, and having to find ways to keep your employees connected. A recent study found that over 40% of today's knowledge workers are feeling disconnected from their company and misaligned with business objectives. So how do you kind of continue to create that feeling across your organization? Email just isn't up to the moment. Emails create a unique partial view for individuals. The sender's in control, not the recipient. They don't create a rapid way of having conversation, and fundamentally, email is insecure. And virtual meetings just don't fill the gap. You have no archive or history. It's exhausting when you have back-to-back Zooms or any other meetings that you might come across. And it's challenging to manage across different time zones. So there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way to create alignment, increase productivity, and ultimately becoming more agile is absolutely critical. Outdated communication and collaboration tools are getting in the way of your company's productivity. So there has to be a more foundational and forward-thinking way to work. Along comes Slack. Slack is the channel-based messaging platform for the enterprise. So today I'd like to talk about channel-based messaging, how it can really support all of your work from home initiatives and helping you to build what we're calling the digital HQ. So let me explain how this works. Slack replaces email inside your company. It's the easiest way to understand what Slack does. If Slack is an alternative to email, then channels are the alternative to inboxes. And let me show you how that looks. In your inbox, hundreds of thousands of updates are given, questions are asked and answered that could be critical information. But here, Jay and Scott have no visibility of these unless they happen to have been CC'd or they're forwarded an email trail. Multiply this up across your entire organization and you end up with hundreds and thousands of emailed silos. This continues to build up and you end up with multiple emails which no one has access to. So what's the alternative? Well, we have to turn these emails into what we call channels. Channels are organized by themes and topics across your organization to really bring together the right people with the right teams and the right information whenever you need it. Work in channels is therefore better. It's faster, it's more focused, it's more aligned, and most importantly for what we're trying to address at the moment, it's more human. So how does Slack empower remote working? Well, let's start with looking at how Slack can support the initiatives around hiring faster. The first things that come into the hiring process, of course, are headcount approvals. Historically, you might have ask the hiring manager and your CFO or your finance directors for this information. But how do you centralize this in a remote work? In Slack, you can get approvals faster by looping in stakeholders early, templatizing information, and providing historical context. You can also create a searchable log of all of the previous requests that you've made, so you can start to see the start of the end-to-end kind of workflow of what this looks like. You can use channels to source and screen top talent, quickly aligning on the hiring process, discussing key requirements, sharing CVs or LinkedIn documents and resumes, all within one place. This not only helps you with the current role that you might be fulfilling to try and find the replacement for, but also when you move down the line, being able to come back to candidates that you might have previously thought might be suitable and have that historical way of finding them to engage them down the line. Slack can also be used to help you gather timely feedback. Of course, one of the big challenges today is not being in the same room as your hiring team or your partners, not being able to have those quick conversations around the coffee machine or in the kitchen to be able to discuss candidates, or being able to have meetings and huddles. So within Slack, whether you're on the desktop, the web app, or on your mobile, you can have these quick conversations, share feedback, reviews on candidates, no matter where you are, and have that historical group of information around each candidate, everyone's feedback centrally in one place. What we've seen is that all of these benefits help to a 3% reduction time, but also a 23% decrease in meetings. Of course, the big reason this is beneficial is because we're trying to reduce those number of Zoom meetings and meetings that you're having that are exhausting the teams more and more. And finally, around the recruiting process, it helps you make faster decisions. You can track candidate acceptances. You can integrate tools like DocuSign and Greenhouse directly into Slack channels so that you can approve salary requests. You can manage the end-to-end candidate review process and have their signatures posted straight into the channel so that you can see, and your leadership teams can see straight away how your candidate progression is focusing. Secondly, I want to talk about how you can onboard more effectively. I actually joined Slack back in April, so I've been onboarded totally remotely. My hiring process was also partially remote because I was interviewing by the end of March. And so some of the stories that I experienced, I want to really talk through the onboarding section of my presentation. One of the things that Slack did, and is one of the huge benefits, is about getting new hires excited before we'd even joined. So with Slack, you can onboard and welcome your new hires to the company before their start date, putting them in as guests to a channel with all of their other new hire cohort. For me, this was particularly great because it meant that not only could I meet and chat to new employees in what would have been the London office, but my entire EMEA cohort were grouped together so that we could chat and share stories, ask questions of the recruiting team within one place before we'd even started. It just helped you to introduce new hires to the culture of the company before we'd even begun. You can automate new onboarding for new hires within Slack. This can be managed by integrating third-party apps, for example, Donut, which we use here at Slack. Donut enables you to kind of map out key check-in days and activities throughout the process, for example, where you can find benefits information, submitting feedback to the onboarding team, for example. But also Slack's own native capabilities support automating new hire onboarding. We've recently launched and developed our workflow builder, which is a totally code-free way of welcoming individuals to channels, collecting information, for example, t-shirt size and favorite cake of a new hire to submit to the office manager. All of these activities that historically you would have done in the candidate's first week in the office and a new employee's first couple of meetings now can just be managed in Slack totally freely and easily. And importantly, you can continue to build culture with new hires. New hire channels exist beyond before you join, right throughout your time at Slack. So I am still a member of my new hire channel. I can still ask questions in there if I wanted to that I didn't know maybe where else to ask, or I was unsure of the correct channel. So these new hire channels continue to post key information from the first day, but right up until throughout your time at Slack, you stay a member of your new hire channel. You have friends that you've met along the way. for the team, for example, that I'd have met in San Francisco if we'd gone to our new onboarding bootcamp, which we did completely remotely, and we continue to do completely remotely at Slack, you still kind of get that idea of your new hire cohort, and you can continue to work together to get to know people. And of course, really importantly, one of the key things is how you can keep new hires informed. This could be around changes to policies. This could be how you collect information around benefits or share information around submitting insurance policy information. Just making it super simple when candidates and new hires have just joined the company to have a central place where they can ask questions. You can see here there's an idea of the Help HR channel. We also have Help IT channels at Slack, so that it makes new hires feel comfortable about reaching out to the right department, not overwhelming them with information, but creating a central place where not only can you ask questions, but also search for the repetitive queries as well. So it becomes super easy when you start using Slack to find questions that have been asked before and get the response. And then we move into how you can drive employee satisfaction with Slack. In the early days of the lockdown, of everyone's quarantines, it seemed like this might be a 2 or 3 week lockdown in the beginning, and everyone was working from home really easily. As the months have continued to draw on, it becomes harder for organizations to keep their employees engaged and satisfied and happy fundamentally. So Slack can be used in many ways to support this. One of the key things that we do at Slack ourselves and that the application really supports is building employee connection. Again, you can use a third-party app like Donut, which matches you with team members across either your own organization or in other regions to have a conversation. This is randomly conducted every 2 weeks. So for example, I'm a member of both my global team, but also the wider EMEA team, so that people I would have never met or had the opportunity to speak to, I get paired up with them on a bi-weekly basis. You organize a 30-minute conversation in your own time and can have these conversations and get to know people, ask questions, learn about their experiences, and really just help connect you to the rest of the organization. Those conversations that you'd have had in the kitchen or on your way to lunch, for example, together with your teams, are obviously no longer possible. So by using applications like Donut connected up via Slack, you can kind of continue to build out that employee connection that's really important to increasing employee satisfaction. Slack can be used as well to emphasize diversity and inclusion. Really important to be able to have particular employee resource groups in Slack. So for example, I'm a member of ERG Women. We have an ERG Mahogany group. We support Pride activities and ERG veterans. The Pride Week program, for example, this year, of course, everything happened remotely. So people shared pictures and celebrations from previous years within the channels to keep morale high and be able to reminisce on better times and more exciting events and be able to look forward to the future as well, all within Slack channels dedicated to each of these key topics. It really provides a space for celebration and discussion across your organization, not just restricted to the teams or the region that you're sitting within. And also, of course, being able to build internal affinity groups. This could be cooking channels, social channels of any type, being able to provide a space for what would have been your social clubs, your interests, and to share photographs or stories. We have a dogs channel at Slack that everyone is a member of, being able to share photos of your work from home life together, react to these, celebrate these, be able to make the most of a tough situation, but by being able to share, like you would in the office, photographs of your animals or of your cooking, of your home, together and chat about them in Slack channels where it's relevant, be able to organize conversations around particular interests that you might have, and just meet new people similar to you would as if we were in the office. Really excitingly as well, Slack have recently released a people directory, giving you access to holistic profiles across your organization. This is bringing everyone together. It allows you to know more about your colleagues, makes it easy to understand the peoples and teams and projects across the organization that they're working on. This unified information from multiple different data sources helps you understand people's interests, where they're working, their specialities, giving you a place to be able to search and find product experts, for example, topics that people talk about, and being able to therefore ask them questions, all supported by the powerful search. An idea of what these holistic profiles look like: imagine having a profile for each person with all the relevant information about them. You get this holistic understanding of who they are, what they're working on, their teams, their focus areas, their expertise and goals. It's all in this one place. So a lot of this that you might know about colleagues that you've worked with in the past, you just simply wouldn't get to know about newer colleagues, people like myself who've joined the company and never been to an office. But with our holistic profiles, it gives you the opportunity to add all of this information together, all of this valuable context to your colleagues, to your reportees, to your management, rather than having to search through many siloed systems to be able to manage this. So that was just an overview of kind of some of the key ways that Slack is enabling you to take that experience of the office and make it digital. I think we're all aware that things aren't going to go back to normal anytime soon. So being able to think about how do we continue to innovate, how do we continue to keep people engaged? And really that's what we at Slack are hoping to be able to do for you and your organization. With this in mind, a few of the things that we're working on to continue to support here. Slack Connect is one of our really big initiatives to bring the office to Slack. Slack Connect are our external shared channels, enabling you to connect with up to 20 different organizations within a Slack channel, entirely securely and managed by admins on both ends. This enables you to work with partners, with third parties, with other organizations within one centralized place. We're continuing to work on the developments around Slack Connect. So having approved organizations verified in certain ways, by being able to automatically approve connections from certain organizations as well, so then you reduce admin overheads, and really opening up your digital HQ beyond just your own organization, but including many different other organizations as well. Secondly, we're moving and releasing engagement analytics to give you real understanding of how people are engaging in the platform, using the channels that they're a member of, the types of things that interest people, the topics that they're reacting to really give you insights into sentiment and how people are feeling across your organization and your teams. We're also introducing an idea in the future of what we're calling at the moment ad hoc connections. This is the idea of being able to have those conversations at the water fountain, have those conversations at the coffee machine, the unplanned conversation that everyone is missing. And finally, asynchronous video. This is the idea of being able to record your team update, for example, record a team meeting status without having to all be on a Zoom or video conferencing call all at the same time. So I could record my meeting update, for example, at 8:52. I share that with my team. They can then watch it whenever they're free, really enabling everyone to work to the schedule that's best for them, absorb information at a time that is useful, and then be able to continue working most efficiently without having to come off what they're doing to have conversations with teams all at the same time. As teams continue to work remotely and more teams are spending more and more days and months in this situation, this particularly supports different time zones when you don't have to stop and regroup at the end of the day or the beginning of someone else's, to be able to make updates and share sort of a real personal feeling of what you're working on and how you're doing. So to wrap up, I want to really talk about how we at Slack manage this transition. At Slack, like everyone else, we found ourselves suddenly a remote team. This was a tweet that was part of a tweet storm from our CEO, Stuart Butterfield, at the beginning of March that talks a little about Slack's journey. And when we think about that journey, it all happened really quickly, like I'm sure it did with many of your organizations as well. 1 minute we were talking about deep cleaning our office, and then within 48 hours over the weekend, we were closing down 18 offices globally across 10 countries and trying to figure out how we supported over 2,000 employees working from home. Originally, we were going to be working from home for 2 weeks, then 2 months, and now we at Slack are looking at summer 2021. So we're really working on how we continue to keep our employees engaged and build out that digital HQ that we're talking about. Slack's response to this growth was really sort of three-pronged. So to tie all of this together, these are the three stages of response that we went through that I just want to wrap up on. Firstly, we had to transition as quickly and as smoothly as we could. Secondly, we had to replace that sense of connection of the office, but from home. And hopefully from today's presentation, you've seen some of the ways that we go about that throughout recruiting, onboarding, and more broadly for culture. But this is similar across all of our different teams at Slack, whether that's the sales team, the customer success team, or the engineering team. All of them are driving forward to bring their employees together and keep them engaged. And lastly, once we've done all of that, how would we continue to innovate and take the best out of working remotely and put ourselves in a position to emerge better out of this? Luckily, we were armed with the product to enable this, and we use Slack in its maximum capability to be able to create best practices for our customers that we work with, so that we and the organizations that we partner with can emerge better from the situation that we are in. So to close out, I just wanted to wrap up with this quote from one of the team at the IDC. Forcing millions of people to change their everyday working practice is a perfect opportunity for companies to become the digital businesses they've always wanted to be. So if we take some good from all of this, it's really a way to drive a new way of working in the future and allow us to emerge better as a result. So with that, thank you very much for joining this session. It's been great to speak to you all.